Hello, friends. The 702nd day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The Russian army has increased the number of offensive and assault operations in the southeastern direction, reports Commander Tarnovsky. In the Tavria grouping zone, the Russians carried out 10 airstrikes, 624 artillery shellings, and carried out 50 military clashes. The Ukrainian armed forces are holding the line and conducting active operations in certain areas, Tarnovsky reports. The general does not report on the situation in Avdiivka, which is located on his site. According to Major Morozov of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Russian army is preparing for a new offensive on Avdiivka and has deployed 40,000 reservists to the city. Among them are prisoners and units Storm Z and Storm V. A tank regiment formed from scratch has also arrived, where new tanks have been spotted that will participate in the assault on Avdiivka, but the defense forces are preparing for this assault. In fact, a new battle has already begun, with the use of a huge number of guided aerial bombs, Morozov said. However, he does not confirm that the Russians took control of the area in the Tsar's Hunt area and advanced further. He calls this situation hyped and the attempt to enter the city unsuccessful. The Russians are making attempts to enter the city. There were attempts to enter from the industrial zone. Our defense forces destroyed these sabotage and reconnaissance groups. They made the same attempt through the Tsar's Hunt to enter the streets of the old part of the city of Avdiivka. I would not make a mistake out of this infoboom to tell us that everything is lost, Morozov said. The statement that the Russians were repulsed in the southern part of Avdiivka was also made by the head of the city of Barabash. His comments to AFP say that Russian groups entered the southern outskirts, but have already been driven out of there. Now the situation is complicated, but under control. The enemy continues to attack. According to Barabash, this was the first time that Russian troops entered the city. However, other sources report that Russian troops are still on the southern outskirts of Avdiivka. The old military expert Julian Rock believes that the Russian army is gradually advancing in this area. Russia is moving forward in several areas. The Bakhmut-style creeping takeover continues. After the Russians broke through the front in the south of Avdiivka, another part of the city came under the control of the invading army. During the attack, some Ukrainian units were cut off and subsequently captured, he writes, citing analysis of war videos. Also, the Ukrainian military resource Deep State reports that the Russians in Avdiivka have approached the 9th Block microdistrict on the southern outskirts of the city. The expansion of Russian control in this area is noticeable in the maps of both Western experts and the Ukrainian side. This is a complex of 9-story buildings, which is of key importance for control over the city. Now on the southern outskirts of Avdiivka, there are heavy battles, attacks and counterattacks from both sides. Butusov, editor-in-chief of the Ukrainian website Censor, comments on the situation. He considers it critically important to prevent Russians from entering these high-rise buildings. Capturing the dominant heights will allow Russia to view and engage drone targets along all roads in the city and find targets for airstrikes. The battles for Avdiivka will not be like the battles for Bakhmut. If the enemy captures the 9th quarter, holding the entire city will become tactically unprofitable. Now our drone operators have a tactical advantage, and it cannot be lost, since in modern warfare the loss of tactical advantages in the use of drones, it is no longer possible to compensate with anything, neither heroism nor the number of people, writes Butusov. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian military telegram channel Deep State confirms the information that the Russians were able to capture positions in the south of Avdiivka and the Tsar's Hunt complex thanks to penetration through the pipe. Deep State writes that the Russians found the entrance to the sewer and carried out serious engineering work, making holes near private buildings. Thanks to the use of the collector, Russian troops went behind the rear of the Ukrainian armed forces who were in the Tsar's Hunt. The latter was thus completely cordoned off by the enemy. Some of the defenders died, and others were captured, the report says. Further, as Deep State writes, the Russians began to occupy houses on the southern outskirts and quickly prepare for defense. The enemy's vanguard tried to approach the crossing, but was rebuffed. In an atmosphere of a certain panic, there were even reports of the loss of Zenit, but fortunately, this was later refuted. Then the defense forces tried to seize the initiative. Attacks were made on the private sector and Tsar's Hunt. In the private sector, the situation remains difficult for both ours and the enemy, the message says. In turn, this is how the Russians describe the penetration through the pipe into the rear of the Ukrainian army. According to them, they had been preparing this operation for almost a year. The sewer pipe passed under the railway, directly under the strongholds of the Ukrainian armed forces, and went out into the residential area of Avdiivka. Advancement and work in the pipe, clearing and preparing exits to the surface, became possible only with oxygen cylinders. Special drills and tools for uprooting, welding machines, and so on. Special air ducts were made in the pipe for the passage of fighters, caches with combat kit and equipment were prepared. The work was carried out only under the cover of artillery in order to avoid detection in conditions of the active use of surveillance equipment by the Ukrainian army, the Russians write. The Deep State Telegram channel also writes about the not completely clear situation in the Tsar's Hunt, but states that there are no Russians there now, while the Russians claim that the complex is under their control and they are repelling counterattacks of the Ukrainian army there. At the same time, Western experts and part of the Ukrainian military telegram channels note the Tsar's Hunt complex as territory controlled by the Russians.
Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.